So, all right. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Paula Berman, and I've been in this proof of personhood space since 2017, really trying to understand how decentralized democracy could be built over the blockchain. And that was when I read the Civil Attack paper and started conceptualizing solutions for this challenge. And I was really coming from this space, this perspective, which I think many people in this room share, which is that while Satoshi Nakamoto had solved the double spend problem, the next great challenge for the field is to try to understand how to solve the double human problem. And that if we can do that, even at a limited scale, these new networks can provide this incredibly fertile realm to explore digital democracies, new monetary systems, and anything that is really more democratic than just the pure free market. So that was in 2017. At the time, I think that the consensus was in the blockchain space, at least, that you could not solve this problem, that you could not address it. And then a year or two later, I was really overjoyed to see many of you venturing out and trying to build solutions to address this problem. And really the only difficulty was that there was no kind of central place where you could go and just learn about all of the methodologies that were being pioneered and tested out. So that was last year when me and Divya decided to write a paper to formalize some of these solutions, to try to understand what were the different trade-offs between the methodologies. And that was when I met and interviewed and asked many questions to a lot of you who are here in this room. And when we were trying to understand what was really the scope that this paper should have, we decided that we weren't going to go for the projects that had objective markers of identity, so that we're doing this with biometrics or iris scans or passport chips. But that was what was truly novel, was to try to understand how to address this with subjective approaches involving humans in the process of defining unique personhood. So this is the scope of the paper is also reflected in the guest list for this group here. Where we have many interesting projects who are doing identity with objective markers, but we really wanted to bring together the folks who are working from this subjective perspective. At least at this initial stage, we may decide to bring others in at a later point in time. And yeah, this paper was really the genesis of this group. And I saw that many of you, even though you had not met each other, there was this great willingness to learn about everything else that was happening in the field, to collaborate, to exchange information. And so me, Vinay, and Kevin started to talk about creating this common channel for everyone to start exchanging about their work, their latest research. And we thought that since most people had not met each other, the idea was to start it with a series of workshops where we could talk about broader themes, get to know who are the other people working in the space. And really then from there, at our final workshop on August 30, we're going to have a discussion of how we can work together moving forward. So this is going to be a really special series of conversations. I'm super excited about it. I hope that you will enjoy it as much as we've enjoyed the process of preparing it. I think that you are all in for a treat. Today is just going to be a lighter conversation. We're going to have Professor Bryan Ford and Kevin Owocki, who will both give a perspective from the theoretical side and the practical side of proof of personhood networks. And then we'll just go into breakout rooms to chat and socialize for a bit before we get into the weeds over the next few weeks. So I'll introduce our first speaker. This is Professor Bryan Ford. Everyone in this room is really standing on the shoulders of many giants, and I'm I think that we're extremely privileged to have one of these giants today with us. Professor Bryan Ford is one of the earliest pioneers in the field of proof of personhood, if not really the founding father of the field. And he started doing his research in pseudonym parties in 2006 during his PhD at the MIT, and has been doing research and implementations of this methodology ever since. He leads the Decentralized and Distributed Systems Lab at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and this is where he's housing many of his initiatives. And since earning his PhD, Professor Bryan Ford has held faculty positions at Yale and EPFL. Today, he's going to be talking to us about some of the theoretical foundations of proof of personhood, and also give us some perspective of the academic origins of this field. Professor Bryan, thank you so much for being with us here today. And yes, you can take the stage.
Well, thank you so much, and it's great to be here. Thank you for organizing this this event. It's really exciting. It's super exciting to see how this how this whole topic has grown. Yeah, let me share my slides. If I can get Zoom to cooperate, always a challenge. So are you seeing the correct view, the slide view, or the presenter's view?
We see the correct view.
The correct view. Okay, great. Thanks. That's always what goes wrong here. Okay, so I've been asked to give kind of a overview from my perspective of so how this all started, especially from the academic side. What some of the history is, and my perspective on it. What's out there and what's going forward. Let me dive right in. This is the outline of the topics I'm going to try to hit on. So first of all, I want to basically set the stage by summarizing the basic problem. What problem are we trying to solve? And to me, this starts with why tech, why today's technology doesn't or maybe even can't serve people. I'll get to that in a minute. But then the history, especially the academic history, the literature, what's been written about this, at least a little sample, and then goals. How should we measure success in this space? What goals precisely should we be pursuing? What might we hope to do with proof of personhood tokens or whatever it produces once we're done? What applications do we want to support? And finally, what are some of the hardest challenges that we really need to be thinking about in order to really solve the problem and not just solve pieces of the problem while leaving other pieces unsolvable. Now, a lot of this, of course, is going to be very subjective from my personal perspective on personhood, and I very much look forward to hearing all of your perspectives as well, because it's very much an early field where there are no standards yet, no definite rules, no hard answers. So let's dive right in. So first of all, what is the problem? Why does technology not succeed in serving people? So to me, what I see as the basic fundamental problem is basically that the internet doesn't know what a person is at all, right? There's this huge gap between everything on the internet, all of our devices, and people. So yeah, they connect to users, but they don't know what users are. So all of our online services, all of our decentralized systems, blockchains, everything only know people as accounts or profiles or digital wallets or whatever, right? And these profiles, accounts, wallets, etc., are cheap. They're discardable. They're easily faked, right? Whatever you put in them, you can make more, right? Now, this has some nice upsides that we want to acknowledge and appreciate. So it was, observed very early on that this means that this can increase inclusion and privacy, right? As the famous New Yorker cartoon illustrates, you can be anyone and participate in principle, right? Well, on the other hand, there's the downside. Well, if anybody can create any number of fake identities of any kind, are the people online really people, right? And there's huge implications to this. And the basic implication is that all of our online services and systems can't count anything one per person. We can't have one per person votes. We can't have one per person quotas, one per person accounts, one per person social services, one per person quotas of a crypto universal basic income, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on forever of the kinds of things we would like to be able to rely on one per person and can't, right? And so because of this, because, well, the web, the internet, as usual, barrels along trying to pretend that it can do one per person things, but it can't. And as a result, we have this massive problem of fakery, right? There's all kinds of incentives everywhere to fake pretty much anything that's trying to pretend to count one per person, like social media. Likes are, kind of proxies for, one per person reputation metrics. Well, so many of them are fake because they're so easily manipulable. Followers and follower counts are fake. You can just buy them online, right? Reviews are fake. You can buy those too. They're pretty easy, right? Votes are fake. If you hold any votes online and try, without really strong IDs, you can basically bet that the results are going to be completely fake, right? And so what this boils down to, most of all, the most serious problem is online communities simply can't self-govern, at least not in any sense we might call democratic, or basically any way that tries to treat people equally, to treat people as having equal voting power, equal rights, equal whatever, right? So people cannot be equal in this online environment. And further implications of this is, well, we can't rely on online self-governance to deal with some of the most serious problems like fake news, what's true, what's not, right? So instead, we have to rely on unaccountable companies, governments that maybe represent some of the world, certain countries, but they certainly don't represent everyone. And of course, unaccountable oversight boards like the Facebook oversight board, who as basically paternalistic proxies to govern online behavior for us, right? So democracy, any semblance of democracy or any one person, one vote governance system is simply not an option in this scheme, right? So this has, for long ago led me to feel like online society, our whole online ecosystem is missing a foundation. And that's why it's collapsing in all of these ways, right? And to me, that missing foundation, we can call it whatever, but I like to call it proof of personhood, right? And so where did this idea of proof of personhood come from? Well, actually, as Paula already observed, it was inspired, of course, by the Sybil attack problem. Now, the problem, of course, goes back even before this paper, but this paper, this wonderful paper, short paper by John Douceur, from 2002, did a really good job of both giving it a term, giving it a name in the computer science space, and exploring just how difficult in general the problem is. So, definitely read that if you haven't already. Now, I'm going to, as a disclaimer, I'm only showing a few samples, spot samples of papers here, probably totally unfairly, very subjectively. I'm sorry if I've missed your favorite paper, or especially your paper, but this is just a few highlights from my perspective. So, of course, this is an egotistical selection. My own paper with my colleague Jacob Strauss from which we actually posted a preliminary version of it online in 2007, but the final published version was in 2008. So try to make sure you get the published version if you go read it. And so this was where we first came up with this idea of using in-person pseudonym parties to create and distribute POP tokens. And this was inspired partly by the even earlier idea of PGP key signing parties and things like that, being leveraging in-person meetings and events to create digital trust in some fashion online, right? So just to summarize the basic idea, and I won't get deep into this here. The basic idea we proposed was that, well, real people have the characteristic that we have only one body each, right? So if we require people to attend a certain event at a particular time, be in a particular space before a certain deadline, and at that deadline, in the lobby or whatever, the door is closed. Nobody else can get in after the deadline. But then, after the deadline, people can leave one at a time and get a QR code scanned or something like that, pick up a ticket. And each of these tickets is basically an attendance badge, a roll call badge, just a proof that I'm someone who was there, right? And so we only use physical security, basically. The fact that, you have only one body, you can't get back in after the deadline. Therefore, at a particular event, each person, if this is handled correctly, each person could get only one token without having to show any identifying information. No ID. These tokens don't need to be and shouldn't be trackable, etc. Right? So, of course, this leaves the big question, well, how do you scale it, beyond one event? Well, this is one of many questions it presents. The paper observes that, well, in principle, this can be scaled by having, multiple or many simultaneous events at different places, right? Since again, we have only one body each, well, you can choose any particular event to go to, but you won't actually succeed in being two of those places at the same time. And therefore, at least in one particular round, in one cycle, you will only be able to get one token from any one of the events you choose, right? So I'm just going to leave my summary of the basic ideas of pseudonym parties there for now and go back to the literature survey. A number of years later, after Bitcoin came out and the idea of cryptocurrencies started to take hold, Vitalik Buterin mentioned in a widely read blog post one of many problems, the problem of creating a unique identity system, right? He wasn't using the term proof of personhood, but proposing any particular solution, but the goal was there already, and I think other people were probably starting to think about it as well. Now, a few years later, after my group had started getting into the blockchain cryptocurrency space, we wrote a short paper which actually introduced the term proof of personhood, and basically explored the idea of using it in the context of cryptocurrencies. Again, this is a short paper. It didn't get into much detail. There's tons of open questions. It doesn't get anywhere close to answering, but it's there anyway. So, of course, I was really happy to see Divya and Paula and Vinay's paper come out back in 2019, I believe, but published in 2020, if I remember correctly, which is a really nice survey of a bunch of different approaches, some of which I hadn't even actually been personally aware of before reading their paper. And so again, I'm super excited to see this explosion of different approaches and experiments. I'm not going to get into details there, but I don't think I need to, because you're all here. So partly that paper and other developments inspired me to write a somewhat longer follow-up paper called Identity and Personhood in Digital Democracy, that tried to explore both some of the challenges, some of these different approaches, and from a comparative analysis perspective. Explore some of the trade-offs and upsides and downsides of different approaches, right? But again, it's very preliminary. It's just a draft online at the moment. So that's where I'm going to